Me too.
Okay, my course in a nutshell is basically going to be an intro and to photography course, primarily for people who have SLR cameras, this kind, which are becoming increasingly popular. They've got low-end ones by Canon, Nikon, Sony, all of those and everything. So, but you know, one of the things with this explosion of photography is that you have more photos, but what you have are exponentially more bad photos. So what I'm trying to do in my course would be to get people, you know, show people the proper way to get the most out of whatever camera they have. So part of what we have to do, though, if we're going to talk about cameras, is a little bit of the history, and it's nothing that I was going to dwell on, and this would be basically what we're going to do tonight would be 1 hour out of a 2-hour class, and what we discuss is kind of the history, not of cameras per se, but of viewfinders. So that you, as the student, can have some, as a photographer, can have some appreciation of what people like Matthew Brady, who was the famous Civil War photographer, went through in order to produce his photos. Because everything he saw was upside down and backwards. Okay, until it was developed, he never saw the result. So we're going to look at that in a little while. But right now, we're going to kind of go through this in lightning speed. That's why you have the handouts. I would ask you to hold any questions because this is kind of in 2 parts. I hope we can get through both. So the first question is, if you travel to Italy and ask for a camera, what will you get? You will get a room to stay in, because that's what the word means. Camera's been around a long, long time. And the original cameras, you'll see what it looked like in just a moment, but it actually related to something that eventually became fixed image photography. So that brings up the next question. How old are cameras?
Pretty old.
Pretty darn old. Yeah. Some of the viewfinders and things like that, which were referred to as cameras, actually go back almost 1,000 years, which is longer than I ever thought. The first thing that we have to discuss is something called the pinhole effect. And this was what I just referenced. It was known by ancient cultures. And basically, it is the ability of light to come through a pinhole and project an image onto a wall. The problem is that the bigger the hole, it lets in more light, so the image is better, but the image is also fuzzy. So the smaller the pinhole, the less the light. Think of the modern cameras when you get into dim light and they have to be open for so long to get a good image. The ancient Chinese actually discovered this and wrote about the pinhole effect, and it's kind of interesting how they discovered it. We'll get to that in a moment. The name camera actually dates to the 10th century, where an Arabian scientist chronicled various naturally occurring pinhole cameras. Any idea what we're looking at?
It looks like a street that has sidewalk.
Yeah, but what is it that's projected on there?
Clouds?
No. Any other guesses?
Dirt?
Was there a light shining on it?
Light, that's true.
And it moved?
But of what?
A tree?
A tree caused the effect. You're on the right track. So it's one event, and because the tree created all these pinholes, what was happening? That it could do this, that it would have that intense a light source.
The light shining through or
Yes.
burning? Yeah.
But what are we looking at? Are we looking at circles or crescents here?
Crescents?
Crescents.
Oh, it was moving. The tree was moving.
No.
No.
No. The tree was stable to get that picture. The moon was moving across the sun. This is actually an eclipse, and this is how it was first noticed.
What?
Yeah, you can come up later and take a close look, because you're going to be getting out of your seats in a minute. But you're looking at literally hundreds of pinholes. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. When they discovered the glass lens, which was back in the 16th century, all of a sudden, a guy named Giambattista della Porta added a lens in front of the pinhole and found that he could use a larger hole. This new lens would then concentrate the light again, and it enabled a larger image, a brighter image. So he added a lens to the pinhole camera, and that's the Italian connection. So what exactly is a camera? Is it a feature in your iPhone, a room in which an artist sits to sketch the view, a tube in space, a small device loaded with light-sensitive paper and a lens, a reason to get on Facebook, or a device that produces images that can turn into an amazing obsession and a lifetime pursuit? Some might argue all of the above. And this was the picture I promised you before. The original camera was literally a darkened room where your subject sat on one side in a well-lighted area, and you sat in there and sketched your figure upside down and backwards. The reason they did this, have you ever wondered how the old masters were able to get the proportioning of their subjects so perfectly? Well, this was one way to cheat and do that. And I say cheat, it's not really cheating. Later on, it became common to use something called the camera lucida, which is basically it's a split prism, and actually a precursor to the focusing method or the viewing method in an SLR camera. So the pentaprism, which was invented in the 20th century, is actually an outgrowth of this technology in fairly common use in the 17th century. So one of the problems that we've always had is determining the view. Since light travels in straight lines, we have a problem if we want to view what we are shooting. The pinhole effect, it turns things upside down and backwards. Sorry, this is in Spanish, but you get the idea. Everything is reversed, both sides. I'm glad it looked like a lot of you nodded when I brought that up. So I'm glad you've had some experience with that, because it makes the rest of these explanations easier. As I stated earlier, pinholes, if you have a small and sharp pinhole, it means little exposure and long exposure times. For those of you who are into a little bit of physics, you could state it this way. You could have an infinitely small pinhole creating an infinitely sharp image, but it would take infinitely long to produce it on film. So everything's a compromise. And if you enlarge that hole to increase the light, as I said, the image becomes fuzzy. Here's an illustration that shows it pretty good. Tiny hole, sharp. Big hole, little fuzzy. There's some point in between there where you get an acceptable level of sharpness. So through the century, man has devised a number of ways of previewing an image. These devices have sought to overcome the deficiencies of the pinhole effect. The result has been ever greater optical complexity. This is probably the most complex device. This is a surface that is this way, if you look at it that way. This is called a pentaprism. This is what was actually known over 150 years ago. But because they didn't have the technology to manufacture them back then, they were lousy, okay? And it really, literally wasn't until the last 50 years when they could accurately produce pentaprisms that gave us the quality that we want in our SLR cameras today. This takes what comes off the film plane, or actually the mirror that sends it up, it flips it this way and then flips it this way. So that what shows through the viewfinder appears upright, but it has been reversed twice in its travel to you. Then we entered the computer age. That is today's finder. That's what's actually showing you the view on any point and shoot camera today, as well as your iPhone, anything like that. So let's talk about the various types of finders, and that's why all these gizmos are sitting here. What's the original finder? It's your eyeball. Take off your glasses if you got them on. Close them. Close one eye. You've got to get rid of the stereoscopic effect of having two eyes. And then you draw what you see. Now, while the eye is an amazing thing, in that it can see just huge range of light levels, it's very sharp if you don't need glasses like I do, and stuff, but what's its big deficiency? How many of you growing up were shown that optical illusion where it said, is this a square or a rectangle? Y'all remember that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's because it was a square. Your eye compresses things this way. I don't know how much and I don't know why, but it does. And the one thing that, I'm always one of these very curious people, so I've always wondered, there's got to be a biological, a historical, and what's the word I'm looking for? An evolutionary reason why the eye distorts in that direction, wouldn't you think? Doesn't that make sense? I don't know what it is. So anyway, little factoid. The next thing that came out is the view frame. You've seen, and I do not have use of this arm, so I apologize. Take their two fingers and you pose them like this. Well, that's what this is. You can open this up. You have a pinhole. And then go ahead and open that.
What is this?
You get a square. You can pass that around.
Okay.
Now, what's the deficiency there? It actually works pretty darn good, and those are sold today for about $8. People that paint outside or sketch outside very often take one of those with them, because if you partially close that door, what are you changing? You're changing your aspect ratio. And if you notice, engraved on there are various aspect ratios: 2:3, 4:5, 1:1.
What's that called? A view frame?
A view frame. And this one is just something this woman made, and it's like, what I was getting, and she actually wrote in her blog about this thing that she spent 2 hours making, and I'm thinking, lady, go out and buy one. But it was the only picture I could find of one. Then we have the camera lucida. What I want you to do, you can all come up here. The camera lucida, when you look down here, it's a partially silvered mirror. So you're seeing both this, and put your hand down here. Now pretend you've got a pencil and that you're tracing out the figure. What that does is it overcomes the deficiency of the eye that tends to compress things. You can get your proportion incorrect, you block in the picture and stuff. So remember, these are early cameras.
Where'd you get that?
From lucidart.com.
You just like randomly buy this stuff?
Yeah, pretty
That's
much.
because you take
Oh,
your
so you can see both the paper
Don't you
and,
do photography. That's my fault.
right? So I'm looking at paper and I'm looking at the thing on the wall.
I remember your little don't take a sunset picture.
There you go.
Don't
Okay.
take what?
Don't sit down.
Don't
sit
take
down.
what?
What?
Don't
Oh,
take
the
a
rules of
sunset.
photography.
Don't
Like
take
your
a,
focal point shouldn't be like dead center.
Yeah, of a sunset, you should take it off to the right or to the left.
oh,
I just always remember that through some of his classes I've taken.
She learned something.
oh, that's good.
Okay, this is Matthew Brady. This is the famous Civil War photographer, and that's one of his actual cameras that he used. Now, how did he focus? Because what the trick here was, you had to focus the thing without really seeing what you were doing. Well, hence they came up with something called ground glass. And if you look down through there, aim it at something fairly bright so you see.
There you go, something bright.
Yeah, just like that.
Oh my gosh, like that.
Yeah, that's ground glass.
That's, that's crazy. Look, there's Steve.
And then there's over on the side here's the actual focus button. And what it does is it moves both of those in and out.
You see Steve? Shining at the
Oh,
bright.
yeah.
Yeah.
That is crazy. I didn't know how to, I know, you kind of like look like, I'm like, where?
Okay, I'm gonna keep on going here because I know time is short. So the first practical production 35mm SLR camera looked like this. It was 1937. And then twin lens reflex was that right there. And that's the image that you're seeing. And then you have the modern digital SLR cameras, and that's the front and back. That would be this one right here.
Do you know?
You can go ahead and look through those. But notice, on the back there is a whole, oh yeah, take this cap off, is a whole lot of information, but no picture. You have to look through the viewfinder.
I had it.
It's insured. It's insured.
I wouldn't.
Now, while they're doing that, I glossed over a couple of other focusing methods. This, I have it set to bulb, and what you can do is hold this in a bright area, pull down the shutter release, which is this thing on the side here, and if you look real carefully, and you aim it at something bright, you're going to see
Oh, I see.
a very dim image. So you can go ahead and pull it down again. Give it a try. This right here on the side. Now that is the same. Originally, guys, I was going to have you make pinhole cameras. They're so hard to get working. Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. It doesn't work. It's broken. No, it's. I'm just kidding.
Well, obviously,
Now here's one of the problems with all of these focusing methods, with the exception of the one that Brianna's holding, is that they don't show you exactly what you're getting. Okay? This one shows you in real time. If you look at this actually, for what it was, this is a camera popular in the 60s. By the way, that was my first camera. I found it in an antique store. Paid $5 for it. I think I paid $5 when I bought it in the
that
60s.
just reminds me of the 60s.
You guys want to see this one?
Yeah.
Shining at something.
Yeah, pull it down and hold it.
Okay, so where do we look in here?
Just look in the
Just
back,
look
because that's
at the
tracing
back.
paper on the back. And it acts like ground glass, but a very poor.
No.
Go.
Just look at it.
Just look at it. Hold it back, now pull down.
Pull down.
I want to see.
That's really what's going on inside of all these cameras. Yes.
Uh-oh.
I wish I would have known you like 3 years ago because we had one of those box cameras. I would have just given it to you. I'm pretty sure it just got thrown away.
Most of them aren't worth much.
No, they're not.
Yeah, but they're
it's just to
still
add your
This is from the
collection.
80s.
How does this one work?
Yes. As a matter of fact.
It looks like the 80s.
I used to have one of those.